Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Happy November. Happy, oh my God, we have so much to talk about this week. So let me get started. There's so much going on this week. And we're going to talk about it strictly through the lens of quantum human design because if you're an astrologer, you already know there's a whole bunch of subtle layers going on to this week. And I'm not an astrologer. I leave that to other people who are better at math than me. So, all right. I'm so excited to be here with you all this morning. We have a lot of things to cover, as I said, a lot of really weird kind of, I almost want to say mismatched energy this week. There's just so many themes going on. It's almost hard to weave all of these themes into a cohesive I don't know, curriculum. All right. So before we get started, I have a couple of things just to share with you. I do want to let you know that the 2026 Quantum Human Design Evolution Guide is now available for sale on any major book retail outlet. We have gone back to our paper version, although it's a little bit meatier than it has been in the past. So we've got a lot of extra materials for you in here. This includes how to actually work through the energy of the transits yourself. It goes through the shift in the gates of the sun and the earth. It's got EFT setups in here to help you get through the energy of every week's journaling, contemplations, Mercury retrograde. It has a big overview in the beginning of what's up for the whole year. I'm going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek. I think it's going to be an interesting and good year. Certainly a year where we're still going to be in the midst of a lot of shift and upheaval, but it promises to be a whole lot different than this year. So hopefully that's going to give you some inspiration and some hope. So again, this is available anywhere that you can get retail books, online. It's also available in digital format. It's also available if you are overseas in all the different major Amazons, international Amazons. So it's on Canada, it's in Germany, it's in Australia. So check your Amazon and if you shop from Amazon. The second thing that I just want to let you know is we are starting today with a 5-day masterclass series. We are going to be talking about quantum human design and thriving and how to thrive during this time. We're going to be looking at important concepts. Like today, we're going to be actually talking about the new world of work. And we're going to put an emphasis on burnout and also a little bit of an emphasis on creating your own personal economy. And what does that really mean? Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about human design and the body and wellness and what does that mean. On Wednesday, we're going to be talking about, this is a really big one, you won't want to miss this, human design and money. Is there actually a wealth code in your chart? And are some of us born with a wealth code and some of us not? Sneak peek here, you have a wealth code in your chart and it has nothing to, nobody's designed to be broke, so don't panic. On Thursday, we're going to be talking about human design and relationships. On Friday, we're going to do some Q&A and some exploration of whatever you want to talk about. So join us. Teresa's going to post the link below. Make sure that you sign up so you don't miss any of the connections, any of the classes and the replays and all the resources we have for you, because we've got a bunch of resources for you. Our master classes tend to be very experiential, so come with an intention of having a great experience, a healing experience, which kind of brings us into the theme of this week. As I said, this week is weird. I don't know what else to say. It's just weird. There's so much going on in the celestial weather this week and so many shifts and changes. It really is kind of like this week is sort of the end of the old and kind of the beginning of the new, but it's still disruptive. There's just a lot of tension and chaos at different points in the week, but it's all mixed in with the possibility of healing. And certainly I would say the number one thing you can do for yourself right now, this week, is to stay connected to yourself. You are your own anchor. You are the place, or your connection to yourself actually gives you the grounding and the rooting you need to be able to stay stable while things shift and turn. So let's start off. I want to start off with the big outer changes and then bring it back in so that it's more focused on what you might be experiencing on a personal level. So the first thing that we want to talk about is that the nodes, which have been in the same position with the south node highlighting the gate 47, the gate of mindset, the north node highlighting the gate 22, the gate of surrender, have been holding that position, reminding us and teaching us about the importance of mindset. They've been in that position since June, I think, of this year. So we've been sitting with mindset and surrendering again and again and again, right? These last few months. We shift this week, starting on Monday. The nodes move to the gate 63, the gate of curiosity, and the gate 64, the gate of divine transference. These are two of the gates in the head center, part of cross of consciousness in traditional human design. Here's some things to think about. First of all, the nodal themes set the plot outline for what's happening in the current chapter of the human story, right? So we're in the chapter of the 63 and the 64, and that chapter is bringing us a curriculum. And that curriculum is really reminding us that everything begins in mind first. And that the beginning isn't about figuring it out, right? Having all the answers, knowing what's next. That's not the beginning, right? The beginning is the spark, the idea, the inspiration, the possibility. Our tendency is, once we get inspired, because these two gates are places where inspiration lives. Our tendency is, when we get inspired, is to immediately try to figure out the answer, to immediately set about trying to decide, is this right or wrong? Is this for us? How do we do it? How can we be first, right? We bring all of this mental pressure in, and we are up in our heads, kind of like, that your mind is a treehouse, and you've pulled yourself up into the treehouse, and you're sitting up in that treehouse trying to figure things out. And what happens a lot of times, because is what the chart shows us, is that the purpose of the mind, and by the way, the mind is not the enemy. I think a lot of times in traditional human design, we talk a lot about how the mind is the enemy. Your mind is not your enemy. Your mind is a tool. Your mind is a really, really important tool, because what your mind does is it uses the power of dreaming, possibility thinking, curiosity, imagination, inspiration to create a field of energy. And that field of energy creates emotional frequencies in the body, and those emotional frequencies calibrate the heart, and the magnetic monopole, that attractive force that lives in the chart, calibrates your heart into a state of coherence, or, if the meanings that you generate are not so great, a state of non-coherence or stress, fight or flight, or fear or fawning or appeasing. And it all starts first with what happens up here, right? Your mind is cultivating frequencies of energy that are influencing what you create, how you perceive the world, what you experience, what you attract, what you call in. The purpose of the mind is, or our to use that mind as a tool. We have to consciously and deliberately harness our mindset. That's what we just finished up with the other, with the south node in the gate 47. We've been learning about the importance of cultivating mindset and using the mind kind of as a magic wand, right? You point it and you create frequencies of energy, positive expectations around it, and we're being called to use the power of our mind in the next few months to explore new thoughts, new ideas, new possibilities, energetically, with our imagination, with our dreams. We're not going to figure it out that way. We're going to figure it out by what shows up in response to the frequencies that we hold. That's very counterintuitive to how most of us are conditioned. Most of us are conditioned to figure out and go do it, right? Figure it out and go do it. And when we are figuring out and going and doing it, especially when we are limiting ourselves to what we can accomplish as human beings by ourselves with our little hands, then we're actually really significantly limiting what else is possible for us. And so these energies are really an invitation that says, what else is possible? How can we explore new worlds, new possibilities, new beginnings using the power of our thoughts and dreams? It doesn't mean that you're not going to figure out what's next. It doesn't mean that you're just going to be sitting there dreaming away for the next few months. It means you're calibrating before you act, aligning before you act, creating resonance before you act, so that the actions that you take are effective and efficient and aligned and in harmony with what you're actually really trying to create. Because if you're not doing that alignment piece first, then you have the possibility, a very real possibility, of reacting, acting out old stories, old patterns, and creating sort of a tape loop of the same experience over and over and over again, just different people, different times, but same meme, right? So the nodes are inviting us to use the power of our imaginations to create something better. And really, in the shadow of these energies, we have to be mindful, because the shadows of these energies are really, they can be dangerous. It's doubt and self-doubt, doubting each other, right? We're in a current recession of trust. We lose trust with each other. And that can be really dangerous, because then we also lose curiosity and we lose our capacity to find common ground. It can be confusion. And really, you're not confused. You're not confused, but we tell ourselves we're confused when we feel overwhelmed or overstimulated or burned out, or we don't know what to do next. That's not actually confusion. That's just timing, right? And so certainly both of these energies also invite us to really get clear about making sure that we are, oops, sorry, something just fell off my necklace. Making sure that we are absolutely 100% staying connected to the transmissions that we can get from the divine, those spaces and places where we dial in and connect. Think of the 63 and 64 as sort of like an electrical socket, right? With the plugs, the prongs, you want to plug into source and get those divine inspirations. And inspiration it's a practice. Staying inspired is a practice. And certainly it is a very important time for us to stay inspired, consciously and deliberately inspired. The next big change on the front is starting on Wednesday. We move into the final creative quarter of the Quantum Human Design year. So the Human Design year is cut up into 4 creative quarters. Each one of these creative quarters gives us a possibility, a task, a creative task. So we're just coming to the completion of a cycle of harvesting. We've been really making sure that we've gathered the fruits of our labor for the year. We've been working actively and exploring our manifestations. Now we enter into the season that sets us up for next year. So in many traditional faiths, the day actually starts at nightfall of the evening before. And I want you to think of this Quantum Human Design quarter that goes until beginning of February. I want you to think of this quarter as being kind of like the evening before the new year, right? The evening before the next cycle. It is darkness. It is involution. It is quiet contemplation. And certainly in this quarter, we are asking ourselves what worked and what didn't. What do we want to continue growing and thriving and building and innovating? And what do we want to release and let go? So we're going into the metaphorical winter. For those of you who live in Australia, it's metaphorical. The metaphorical winter of our seasons. We are going into this season of quiet, stillness. We've harvested. We've prepared the beds for the winter. We've put down the straw and put everything to sleep. And now we are going in, and we are going inward and really exploring important questions that get us ready for what's next, for what is our next new creative cycle. And 2026, you can read about it in the 2026 Quantum Human Design Evolution Guide. 2026 is definitely going to be a year of creativity, of expansion. So this fourth quarter always starts with the sun in the gate 1 and the earth in the gate 2. So these are 2 individual energies coming off the top point of the G center and the bottom point of the G center, really emphasizing that part of what we have to work on in this still dark time is our connection to our authentic self. And we are invited, and actually we're initiated this week with a full moon on Wednesday, highlighting the gate 2, the gate of allowing. We are invited as part of this contemplation to really ask ourselves, what do we deserve? What are we willing to allow ourselves to experience? And what are we not willing to allow ourselves to experience? How do we need to possibly change our story so that we are moving into a place of radically trusting that we are fully supported, that we have access to, and that we can tap into all the resources we need to fulfill our unique destiny. Here's the thing, and I talked about this a little bit last week. Our ability to call in what we need in terms of support and encouragement, resources, etc., goes up exponentially when we're being radically authentic. If we're trying to add extra stuff to the equation, if we're trying to figure out, if we're doing band-aid manifesting because we think, oh, I need this money or whatever, and we don't actually ask for what we truly want, when we're not being relentlessly authentic, we actually block the flow of abundance. And so this whole quarter is really a healing quarter, a quarter that invites us to really ask ourselves, are we standing in our truth? Are we speaking our truth? Are we committed to our truth? Are we living our truth? Are we being honest with ourselves, first and foremost, about what we want and what's going on? And are we going to allow it? And are we going to allow all the goodness and support that we need? Or do we need to heal? Do we need to heal that connection? So that's definitely part of what I want to encourage you to also drop into during this creative season, during this cycle. Again, we have from now until February to really get us going. And you know, how fun and exciting that we get going in this quarter next week with a Mercury retrograde cycle for 3 weeks. So we're definitely going, November is just going to be a weird month. I'm just going to tell you straight up, it's going to be a weird month. And part of what's going to be weird about it is it's going to feel like you're stuck in cosmic goo this month, quite potentially. It's going to potentially feel like you can sense and feel, and you know, like, I want to do this thing, and you get excited, but getting traction and momentum this month might feel really challenging. That's the next thing I'm going to talk about, because we're in this weird place where we're doing healing work, we're finishing up a healing cycle, we're starting with the next, and it all sort of comes at a head this week. And so certainly I would say this week is a week of finishing up a healing cycle. And certainly I would say the healing cycle that we've been in has been about looking at the patterns of the past, exploring the places where we are still reacting to old patterns, or the fear that the old pattern is going to repeat itself, and rationalizing settling less than what we want. That's the pattern we're healing, right? And really looking at, okay, if I take my trauma off the table, if I take any place where I've internalized the message that it's not okay or safe for me to be who I am and how I am, if I take that off the table, what do I want? And what can I create? Because those old patterns are not going to repeat themselves. Many of us, most of us, are creating from patterns that we cultivated in a time when we felt threatened or unsafe. And our bodies internalized that pattern, that our bodies remember that pattern. And anytime we sense, smell, feel, the memory is not just the mind, it's the senses, right? Anytime our senses start to encounter an experience that feels similar to that trauma, then we react in that old protective pattern. Well, you're acting out in a pattern that was created in response to something that probably doesn't exist anymore. And so we're really being invited to drop those patterns, to really let go of any place where maybe you are settling for less than in any way, shape, or form, or you're playing small because you are keeping yourself small for safety's reasons. So a big opportunity this week to sort of finish up this cycle that we've been working on. And so much of this cycle has been about taking back control over the story you tell about who you are and how you are and what you deserve. When we get to Wednesday, and I would say this is a lot of tension this week. So, really try to just take it moment by moment this week, because the pattern is coming to a completion, but there's also disruption happening, and there's also expansion happening, all sort of in the same pot. And right before Mercury goes retrograde, and right as we have this nodal shift, We have Uranus going from Gemini back into Taurus. I think that happens on Wednesday as well. Wednesday is just a watershed day. And so lots and lots of retrograde energy in the outer planets. It's just going to feel gummy this month. It's going to feel gummy. And so what the sun reminds us, especially starting on Wednesday, is that the thing that you have control over is yourself, your story, your narrative, your perspective, even how you construct aspects of your inner and outer environment. And that's really going to be a big theme for all of next year. What do you have control over? And where are you letting somebody else's story of control blot out your own sovereignty? And how do you get back in touch with your own sovereignty? We are looking at and exploring the themes of power and empowerment, personal power, collective power, cultural power, community power, and exploring how do we stay connected to our own power. Well, that's in here. That's in here. And certainly this week is a good invitation to check in and ask yourselves, are there any places where you're abdicating your personal responsibility, your personal power, your personal mentorship, your personal stewardship over your own story and your own life? That's a big question. That's a big question. And, you know, I will just share with you all. I read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl probably, I know I read it once a year. I usually read it a couple of times a year because this is a story, an autobiography of a man who was in the concentration camps in World War II and decided that he wasn't going to let anything that was happening in the camp, even though he had experienced terrible loss, he wasn't going to let anything happening in the camp cause him to disconnect from his own sense of self, his own purpose, his own meaning, and the dreams that he had for his own future. And he actively held on to those dreams no matter what happened to him, and managed to survive the concentration camps, and went on to teach about purpose and did important work in the world about personal purpose, or life purpose and meaning. And it's an incredibly inspirational story, because at least I will just share that for me, when I start to feel sorry for myself, which happens on occasion, maybe for you too, I remind myself, you know, if somebody can be in a concentration camp and find hope, then I certainly can get through my stinking day, right? And so I know that it's an extreme example, maybe in some cases, but a really good book to read to help you remember to stay connected to your own sovereignty, your own story, your own inner world, your own creation, and use that to create sovereignty in any other area of your life, in your own personal economy, in your wellness and well-being, as best as you can. So that's kind of the theme that happens on Wednesday when the sun moves to the gate 1, the earth moves to the gate 2, grounding us in an exploration of the question, how good can you stand it? How much are you willing to allow yourself to receive in order to fulfill the story you were born to fulfill? That's another big question for us to explore this week. Mercury, as I said, we're all just dot your I's, cross your T's, double check everything. It's going to start getting weird this week. We move officially into Mercury retrograde starting next week on Monday, but we're sort of in the pre-retrograde phase. So be mindful of the details, pay attention to the details, be careful. Maybe be mindful also of what you say, and make sure that you use words that are uplifting. Maybe take a breath before you speak and really evaluate what's up. Last but not least, I just want to say the theme of money also plays out this week. Venus starts off the week highlighting the gate 14. The earth in the gate 2 is also kind of a money piece in the chart, so that 14-2 gets temporarily activated a couple of ways, different ways this week. Is definitely a theme, a place for us to really explore our personal sovereignty around money, our relationship with money, anything we might be rationalizing or settling for when it comes to money, anything we'd like to be creating around money, and the role that money plays in our story when it comes to fulfillment. Are we letting the story that I don't have enough money, or money is hard, or money is scarce, are we letting scary stories about money stop us from fulfilling our own narrative? The story you tell about who you are and how you are has nothing to do with money. You can be yourself. You can be relentlessly authentic regardless of your financial status. It's not easy. It certainly can be easier when you are supported, but you'll actually be able to tap into greater quantities of support when you're being authentic. It's also a week to redefine what is abundance. Yeah, money is good. Yeah, the baseline has to be handled, but what else is abundance? What else makes us abundant? Because when we limit that to just a definition that involves only money, then we miss a lot of the really good, juicy, amazing things that are available. So I know there's a lot going on. I know there's lots of parts and pieces. I think to summarize this week, I would say it's a week of endings and beginnings. It's a week of sparks and contemplation, and a time where things are disrupted and things are just going to continue to be disruptive. And so certainly I would say make sure that you are cultivating a personal practice of reconnecting with yourself on a regular basis, like on a daily basis, not just once every 3 weeks when you have time. This is a very important time for you to cultivate structuring a practice that helps you stay connected to yourself, your abundance, your dreams, your ideas, your truth, anything that is yours that no one else can have, no one else can have control over. And I would certainly, again, encourage you, meditate, pray, have some kind of a practice that keeps you inspired, plugged in to source, keep yourself connected, take good care of yourselves, eat well, sleep well, do what you can to just root yourself down. This season will end. This season will end. And eventually we're going to get to a better part of the story. We're just in the tension part right now. And the world needs us to stay true, to hold the center, to stay grounded, to stay true to ourselves, and stay true to the vision that we hold for what else is possible on the planet. Take good care of yourselves, my friends. I will see you all next week, and hopefully I will see you at 11 a.m. Central for our first day of our 5-day Design to Thrive Masterclass series. See you soon.